God himself helps those who dare. Ovid. Please support my channel by liking and sharing my videos. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor.
Have you looked at the Great Filter? Have you looked at that concept?
This is where a civilization tends to not get through a great filter event. That's why we don't see a lot of other civilizations in the stars.
Yeah, exactly. And so whether you agree with that concept or not, I actually think that if the great filter is in front of us and not behind us, so we're either past the great filter or it's in front of us, then if the great filter is in front of us, I actually think the thing we're talking about right now is the great filter.
Is Bitcoin.
Yeah. Can humanity go from a collect things, get paid for things, grow forever?
Yeah.
Because on a finite planet, you cannot grow forever.
Right. Yeah.
It's impossible, right? But our system requires forever growth.
Yeah. Right.
To a system that growth is the bad measure. It's productivity gains.
Yes. Okay.
Decline in price.
Yes.
It's the opposite of the way we think about growth today.
Money is a measurement of goods and services that are produced. With the aid of technology and well-managed resources, businesses can create goods and services for cheaper. The central banks and governments dilute the money supply to counteract this efficiency. They believe a crisis comes from deflation, so they have a target of 2% inflation. During this crisis, they printed more than 2% in order to keep the system afloat. Now our currencies have been diluted and the banks use the cheap money to leverage positions. The central banks now have no choice but to inflate because the slightest deflationary shock will cause a domino effect. I opened a 5x position in Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin crashes 20%. I lose all of my money. The big banks have levered positions in much higher than 5x. If we see another sell-off as we saw in March, the banks lose their positions and will require another bailout. What happens when the too big to fail again? The centralized power structure that is in place will need a transformation. This is where crypto and blockchain technology is key. There is no longer a need for central intermediaries.
JP Morgan Chairman Jamie Dimon, America's most famous banker, made a remark which went, I think, underappreciated a couple of days ago in his annual letter to shareholders, stating that banks are playing an ever increasingly smaller role in the financial system. That's a remarkable piece of anti-marketing by JP Morgan's chairman. And this, he said, is because of competition from fintech.
Today, JP Morgan announces that they're going to manage a Bitcoin fund. Jamie Dimon sees the trend and is preparing. This video is sponsored by BlockFi. BlockFi is the place to grow my crypto portfolio. CeFi platforms follow all KYC and AML regulations, so I rest easy knowing that if regulations came out of left field, BlockFi is following the rules. Recently, crypto dad Chris Giancarlo joined the BlockFi board. Chris is a former CFTC regulator and head of the Digital Dollar Foundation. You can earn interest and compound your interest on stablecoins, crypto, and Pax Gold. To quote Einstein, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it. BlockFi is global. The only exception is sanctioned nations. I encourage everyone to research BlockFi. If you use my link, blockfi.com/Darren Moore Jr., you can earn up to $250 in bonuses. Borrow, lend, or sign up for a Bitcoin cashback card. The link is in the description below.
Now, what this means for the US dollar and the United States is that as China comes to dominate the next generation of fintech, particularly in global supply chain management, China's digital currency, the global digital yuan, and China's fintech will come to replace a great deal of the banking system. And this will have profound strategic consequences. Morgan Stanley analysts published a paper today by their economics department stating that in the most disruptive case, banks could lose their deposit base to central banks issuing digital currencies. In other words, you don't need to keep your money in the bank if you can make digital payments directly off your smartphone or a business to business. You don't require banks as an intermediary. And if you look at the chart, this has dire implications for America's international position because America is the provider of the world's reserve currency, the US dollar. There are $16 trillion worth of offshore dollar deposits. Most of these are used to finance international trade. That's more than half of all the offshore deposits in the banking system.
China leads the world in manufacturing output. They create the most goods that get traded around the world. Trade requires escrow accounts that are priced in dollars. Well, China may have another option for you, a digital currency that's frictionless, that's accessible through an app. When trade with China is instantly settled using their digital yuan, the huge banks will take a massive hit. So will the dollar.
Why should the United States provide most of the currency in the banking system in offshore deposits when it only accounts for 8% of global exports? And the reason is because in the current system, importers and exporters have to borrow and leave large deposits banks to finance trade transactions. But the next generation of fourth industrial revolution logistics will give you complete information about the whereabouts of every product in the world, at what stage production it might be at, how it's being shipped, how it's being warehoused, where it will be delivered. And the combination of big data and artificial intelligence will allow just-in-time delivery and just-in-time payments. Fintech follows the fourth industrial revolution.
Klaus Schwab coined the term Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's a book where he talks about the convergence of technology, biology, and stakeholder capitalism. Klaus Schwab is the founder of the World Economic Forum. By the way, Ripple is a World Economic Forum partner. Just-in-time delivery, just-in-time payment sounds a lot like the Internet of Value.
And that's what makes the digital yuan such a formidable challenge to the United States, because as smart logistics and AI-driven global supply chains come to dominate, we're not going to need this mass of currency in the banking system. And because the United States is the largest provider of global bank deposits, the United States is most affected.
Fintech will eliminate the need for Nostro and Vostro accounts. The US dollar stands to lose the most from this disruption. It's certainly not fair that the US is able to print money to purchase the fruits of the world's hard work and resources. However, a disorderly exit of the dollar will send shockwaves through the global economy. It will affect all life on this planet. There is going to be either a crisis and the world reacts, or there will be a diplomatic transition.
Now, if the United States were not running $1 trillion a year current account deficit, and if it weren't borrowing 15 to 20% of its GDP to finance its domestic budget deficit, this might not be a serious problem, except of course for bankers like Jamie Dimon. But the volume of deposits in the global banking system, the $16 trillion plus about another $8 trillion in US Treasury securities held by foreigners, that $24 trillion is cheap or zero interest rate loans to the United States of America at a point when the United States needs to borrow as never before in peacetime. That's a serious problem for the United States, and that's why the digital yuan and China's leadership in AI and big data is such a formidable challenge to the United States. So be afraid, be very afraid. This is David Goldman on April 20th.
The elected officials and the central planners are promoting modern monetary theory, essentially issuing as much debt as possible and to curtail mass inflation by taxing the currency supply away. The end result is a larger government or socialism. Throughout time, the idea of issuing debt and increasing taxes has failed. One of the reasons socialism fails is due to the lack of price controls. Prices tell the free market where attention is needed. When central planners are in charge, they direct resources to what they see fit. We are moving to the fourth industrial revolution, where artificial intelligence is integrated into the economy and will analyze the world's spending patterns. AI analytics can determine where the central planners need to allocate resources. They're attempting socialism yet again, and this time technology will prevent the failures where past socialistic societies have failed.
Disruption. They say disruption really occurs when the old system becomes irrelevant. Not that it becomes improved, it becomes irrelevant, right? And that's like going from, CDs to MP3s and iPods and things of that sort, right? And I think those sort of paradigm shifts, unfortunately, we can learn from them when we talk about money and banking and finance, but we can't mirror that. And the reason is, like was just said, they have to coexist for some time because there's inertia in banking. There are bigger companies and governments even who have a lot to lose through this transformation. And it's not just about money, it's control and it's power, right? And so there's got to be sort of a more of a compromise, really, right? It can't be one of these disruptive Silicon Valley-esque, Apple comes in and decimates the music industry and just replaces it with something new because it's better and cheaper for the end user, right? The customer, right? In this case, it's got to sort of have the oversight and the buy-off or the sign-off of governments.
The old system is being disrupted. The old system and the new system need to coexist for an orderly transition. It so happens that Ripple is leveraging the technology and hand-delivering it to the banks on a silver platter. XRP is the bridge between the legacy system and the new system. Let others praise ancient times. I am glad I was born in these. Ovid. Thank you for liking, watching, and subscribing. If you enjoy my work, please consider joining my Patreon. Remember to hit the bell.